So as part of, one of the only democracy in the Middle East, one of their latest actions was to raid the Al Jazeera headquarters in the West Bank and seize cameras, equipment, shut it down, etc. They sent in IDF soldiers to do this. Our own Ryan Grimm has actually been in Doha at a conference there. I think he's back now. He just arrived back. He said the jet lag was pretty terrible. But while he was there, he appeared on Al Jazeera to talk about this situation. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Joining us on set is Ryan Grimm, co-founder of Dropsite News and the host of the show Counterpoints. Thanks very much for joining us, Ryan. This attempt to silence the media, is it a desperate attempt by a government that's increasingly under pressure?
I don't know how desperate an attempt it is, or if it's a presage for, a ramping up of the assault on the West Bank that we're seeing. I'm not sure I would characterize it necessarily as desperation. It is certainly a lashing out and a flailing, but this is of a pattern that we have seen consistently, as you just laid out.
And you say that it would potentially be a ramping up of military operations in the West Bank. So it's logical to conclude Israel wouldn't then want an international audience to see exactly what is happening there.
Well, they very conspicuously prevented international journalists from entering Gaza after October 7th. And also, as you mentioned, have killed more than 100 journalists on the ground there. So the number of working journalists in Gaza now is dwindling into the dozens. And so it would raise alarms for me if I lived anywhere near there, that step one would be the silencing of the media before step two, a ramping up of the assault.
Israel is under an increasing amount of pressure, especially internationally. We've seen the tide turn in terms of what is acceptable. We've seen heard accusations of violating international law. Meanwhile, Israel calls itself the only democracy in the Middle East. Actions like this against a free press, is it not then counterproductive? It doesn't help their case at all, does it?
No, but I don't think that they have much credibility on the international stage left to lose. And so I think that going into their calculations here, they are already saying that we have lost this mantle of the most moral army, the only democracy in the Middle East. Those have become punchlines internationally, rather than talking points that anybody takes seriously anymore. And so this feels like a gloves-off situation, because sending in armed troops to drag journalists out of their headquarters creates the kind of images that would make any country calling itself a democracy ashamed. The fact that not only were they willing to do this, but it appears did so partly for the production of those images suggests that they are beyond the realm of worrying about the PR of how it looks.
I think that last point from Ryan is such an important one, that they're not even trying anymore. Mm-hmm. And of course, for liberal Zionists inside of Israel and the many liberal Zionists who defend all Israeli actions here, it becomes very difficult because that key talking, the only democracy in the Middle East, becomes very difficult to say with a straight face when they're taking such actions that are brazen against a free press. And he's also right to point out, it was very intentional that post-October 7th, the only Western journalists who were allowed in were if they went on a hand-selected IDF ride-along, a friendly outlet like CNN, okay, we'll take you along, we'll show you what we want to show you. And even within those narrow confines, that still sometimes led to the exposing of, horrific war crimes. Jeremy Diamond was able to expose some horrific war crimes, assaults on cemeteries in Gaza and things of the sort, and some debunking of IDF lies and propaganda as well, even within those narrow confines. So the assault on journalism has been longstanding, but as Ryan says, there is now just completely gloves off, as they don't even try to maintain a fig leaf of credibility, because internationally it's already preposterous. It's already a joke. Let me just put up Al Jazeera's reporting on what exactly happened here so I can give you some more of the details. They write, Israeli soldiers have raided Al Jazeera's bureau in Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, ordered the Doha-based news network to shut down operations amid a widening Israeli crackdown on media freedom. Heavily armed and masked Israeli soldiers forcefully entered the building housing Al Jazeera's bureau, handed the 45-day closure order to the network's West Bank bureau chief. That bureau chief said that Israeli military's closure order accused the network of incitement to and support of terrorism. Al Jazeera also said that Israeli forces used tear gas in the vicinity of the bureau and in that area in the heart of the occupied West Bank city. She added Israeli soldiers confiscated their cameras, and she feared the military might try to destroy Al Jazeera's archives, which are also stored in the office. You saw some of the footage, but we can put this back up on the screen when Ryan was talking of the assault on Al Jazeera's headquarters. I think we have some VO that we can play here as well of these masked IDF soldiers coming in, holding weapons and what appeared actually to be cameras, and raiding this office with very little notice. So, yeah, Saagar, that's the reality in this great democratic ally of ours in the Middle East.
Good to see Ryan in a different setting. It's definitely fun.
Good to see him repping CP, repping counterpoints internationally. Love that.
Respect Al Jazeera, actually, for saying counterpoints, host of that show. The details of it are honestly crazy. I mean, the more I read about it, I was like, okay, like, what's the justification? It says the initial order is closed for 45 days. It was renewed. Al Jazeera journalists are not allowed to report from inside the country. After the raid, the bureau chief says, what are they doing to our office? The government media office in Gaza still, has maintained its own problems. The Secretary General of the Palestinian Initiative said Israel, quote, had no right, legally speaking, to even close any office in Ramallah, which just kind of highlights the entire insanity of the legal regime and how this entire thing works. So the whole thing is nuts. And it's one of those where I could just say in the region, at this moment, this is all being taken notice of. And yes, nothing exploded, luckily, post-October 7th yet. In other places, Jordan, Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. But all of these places, they have their own populations who Al Jazeera is their #1 news source, and they see things like this, and the level of anger gets ramped up, and a conflagration in Lebanon would be just what they need for there to be some sort of global, conflagration in the entire region, and that's probably what I worry about the most.
Al Jazeera is the only large network that has been able to maintain coverage in Gaza at all and in West Bank. I mean, a lot of the more professional images and understanding of this conflict that we've been able to obtain are courtesy of their genuinely brave journalists. And remember that quite a number of journalists, I think 100 journalists, have been killed by Israel since October 7th. And some of those have been Al Jazeera journalists. So, now they don't want any sunlight whatsoever. They don't want people to know. They don't want those images coming out. And so they're making this show of force and shutting Al Jazeera down entirely. And it's a loss for all of us that we won't have access to the same level of reporting that we did previously.
Yeah, all I want is the ability to see all sides. It's totally fine. Israel, you want to put your stuff out? Okay, cool. But just let people in. That's it. Allow people in to report. And I think it's telling.
If you're fighting such a moral war, you should want to show us.
Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't have it. I mean,
look,
you could hate America, but there were literally journalists on the front lines of Iraq in the front convoy. Some of the best. One of my favorite books, Generation Kill, was literally from a guy there. It's like with this level of press access, it's like zero. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.